All right, pause where you are. Let's take a look up at the screen. You can stay where you're at. We're going to go over this in a minute. Let's get up to this point. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the map we started going on over yesterday. Okay, and go ahead and hit the lights. Over here, we got what? 13 colonies, yes. And here, why 1783?
The proclamation one.
No, that was before. That was 1763.
I did this last time too.
Well, that was 1789, and yes, that's coming along.
It says Treaty of Paris.
Okay, 1783 marks the end of the war with.
France.
No. Thank you. The end of the revolution. France is on our side. Now, look. 1783. Deal. Okay, everybody, look at the screen so you see this. Britain is kicked out of here. Okay, Sarah, look at the screen. Britain's kicked out, and the United States has all the land of the Mississippi River. Britain's gone. Remember that Pinckney's Treaty? The United States gets the right to use what river? Anybody remember? It's only one that makes sense. Say it louder with confidence. Mississippi, yes. So now Spain's kicked out. Okay. It's a good deal. Washington gets the land gets the right to use the river without even firing one shot. What do we got here? Louisiana Purchase. Notice we're going in secession. And speaking of secession, you got the Mexican secession, which is preceded by Texas independence and then joint occupation, as you can see, of Oregon, which is going to, of course, be rectified later. Don't forget Florida Purchase Treaty. So you want to keep some of this in mind. I realize you might not remember every part of this, but you want to see the progression. Okay, now, not to be too simplistic here, but what direction are we going? Why is Kemper the only one saying it? Everybody say it. Good. Is the final frontier Alaska?
No.
Okay.
Not in their case back then, the frontier thesis case.
Anybody know the question at the top there? Why are you staring at me? I asked you a question. And you don't even crack a smile, man. Come on.
It's not funny.
Well, I thought it was.
You know what? We have different opinions, I guess.
John, read.
Frederick Jackson Turner's Frontiers Thesis. The end of the frontier ended a unique era in U.S. history. The frontier contributed to the American identity. Helped make American society different.
Okay, and that's important that we understand that. Help make society different from in Europe, the frontier. Okay, moving right along here. Wrote the significance of the Western frontier, the frontier thesis. Go, John, go.
Up to our own day, American history has been in a large degree the history of the colonization of the Great West. The existence of an area of free land, its continuous recession, and the advance of American settlement westward explain American development.
Now, I want you to understand, this gets controversial because he's saying the frontier closes. The thesis is written what year? Okay, the thesis is based on what census?
The close date of the frontier,
1890, yes. Adam Norris just told you that, 1890. That's why another reason why 1890 is very significant. You got to know that year. Okay? The West was viewed as a safety valve. What does that mean? Safety valve. Girl, what do you mean? What does that mean? Go ahead. Go ahead.
There was like resources.
Okay. Go ahead.
When there was an economic depression, people went over there because it like gave them like more expensive ways to make government when they couldn't get paid for their jobs.
Okay. Now, I want you to understand this is controversial because not everybody agrees with Frederick Jackson. Notice the reality, few actually moved out west. Actually, farmers moved to the city, and you can see that in the census also. Look at that. By 1910, farmers were actually a minority population out west and still are to this day. Okay? But the significance of the frontier, individualism. How many have heard the phrase, go west? It's once been said that you go to live in Las Vegas for two reasons.
Gambling.
No, if you don't live there to gamble, you won't be living there too long. You'll be done in a week.
Yeah.
Two reasons: to escape a traumatic experience in your past, or because you just won $1 billion and you want to spend it.
Gambling.
There you go. Has anybody ever been to Las Vegas? If you ever go to Las Vegas, you'll find out that there is not one person who lives in Las Vegas that's actually born in Las Vegas. That's not the way it works.
So if you run there, you just leave.
Could be. But again, I just want you to understand that individualism, the idea that people are moving west for a new identity. I also want you to understand that he claimed democracy was actually born in the West. And boy, can we think anything other than women voting? Something to think about there. True American democracy was created on the frontier. That is really something to think about. Freedom, of course, independence. There wasn't a whole lot of law out there. Okay, so the Turner thesis. Katie, please.
The process, the moving frontier line, and the impact it had on the pioneers going through the process. He also stressed results, especially that American democracy was the primary result, a lack of interest in high culture and violence. American democracy was born of no theorist's dream. It was not carried in the Sarah Constant to Virginia, nor in the Mayflower to Plymouth. It came out of the American forest, and it gained new strength each time it touched a new frontier.
That's pretty powerful. American democracy was actually born on the frontier. If I were to ask you where American democracy was actually created before we even talked about this, or before I even mentioned it, you probably would have said maybe in the House of Burgesses, maybe when they wrote the Constitution, maybe when they wrote the Bill of Rights. But I doubt very much you would say it was actually created on the frontier. I need you to understand that's what he is claiming. And when you read this, read it closely and look at what he's saying. Okay, then I ask you to take a look at this. All right. Teach you with the answers. Okay? You want another couple minutes? Go ahead.
Railroad abuse.
By the way, somebody please be able to answer that 1896 down there, the presidents.
What am I supposed to write?
What they stood for, the platforms, is what I whited out.
Brian of the Popular Party.
Now we're talking. See, now I'm happy.
I'm so smart. I'm just not with wars. Don't ask me about wars.
Okay, we won't. Except the Great Indian Wars.
Listen, I already got that answer wrong earlier. And then William McKinley, he was the one that they gave a bunch of money to try to get him on top of it. He took the bribes from whatever his name was.
He didn't really take the bribes, but he was definitely paid. His
a lot. His
was
campaign was like the most expensive one.
But now, what did he stand for? How did the Republican Party change with this election? That's what I want you to know. What did the party become?
It became more about business.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Industrialization.
And not so much. What did the Republican Party of Lincoln support?
Slavery.
Well, all that falls under what umbrella?
People. Like they're more about the people, but now they're more about business.
Say one more word and I'll give it to you. More about the people, more about what? Okay, keep going. Katie's thinking, I can tell.
Trying.
The people. It was about the people. Party of Lincoln. What do we call those? Think of Locke. Think of Jefferson.
Common man. He's asking about the Republican Party. We went from blank. And Populist Party was Brian. We went from blank and turned it to industrialization. And I said equality.
We went from.
Okay, equality. It's all. What's that all under? Think Martin Luther King. Two-word answer. Something you all have. Not wrong. Say it again.
Civil rights.
Civil rights, yes. So the Republican Party transitioned from a party of emphasizing civil rights to business. Now, I don't want you to think for 1 minute that means the Republican Party didn't all of a sudden care about civil rights. It most certainly did. Okay? It was still the Democratic Party that was supporting segregation, etc. Okay? Okay. So, did anybody get, what do we have there? For overproduction, yeah, that was mostly it because the overproduction, the prices went down due to the technology. That's what I have. I think that'll make sense there a little bit more. Did you get Wounded Knee there and all that? Did you write down Wounded Knee was the end of what was called the proverbial Indian Wars? In the middle there? Make sure you do. Why did the Dolls Act create assimilation?
Because they wanted to weaken the Indians more so that they could just take the land because they were a problem for them anyways, and they just
Well, you're not necessarily wrong, but what did the Dolls Act provide for Native Americans?
land by themselves, private land.
Yes, so how does that break down?
Because they used to live in groups and now they can only stay on certain land.
Now we're talking. Okay. Overproduction, technology, railroad abuse, high rates, and of course, indebtedness, growing debt, mortgages. Don't worry a whole lot about that. But I'm glad we were able to figure out 1896. Remember, why does the Populist Party end? What happened? Why did the farm movement start to break up? The Granger movement. I gave you a good reason for it. Something gets all our attention. Something that makes us all happy.
Isn't it about like the railroad and steel and people moving more into the cities? So the farmers moved out of the farmland and more into the cities.
That's coming later. Okay, stay with me. Why did the populist movement end? Why did the farm movement? Why all of a sudden did the farmers give up and not push for equality? The populist movement was based on farming.
Because they needed support from the government. Because otherwise the tariffs and stuff.
We're almost there. Why would all of a sudden they give it up? Why would any cause all of a sudden you give it up?
Because you get money.
Now we're getting there. So you got what you wanted, so you're done. Well, what happened is farm prices started to go up. Now, I made that clear, and I want you to know that. The farm prices started to go up, so then they dropped it, and that's why the Populist Party ended. It wasn't so much because Bryan was defeated. It was because the farm prices, farmers were like, well, wait a minute, I'm doing fine. Why change anything? That's why, okay? Okay, there's down at the bottom. Most of you got that. But there's the deal. Why did the Populist Party fail? The economy started improving. Okay? And yes, more farmers did move to the urban than the rural, but the big deal was the economy was improving. Okay? Now, Populist Party platform, we'll get to that when we get to the progressive movement, but take a look at this. The 17th Amendment, remember, 17th Amendment, before this was passed, senators were elected by state legislature, not by the people. Could you imagine how unfair that is? Say you have a state legislature that's all Democratic, and then they would elect all Democrats, but don't give the people in the state a right to vote. Okay. Okay, Union Pacific Railroad. Let's read through this. Both received monetary aid from the government. Western expansion was not controversial. The duty of Americans was to expand westward to the Pacific. The railroads were the key technology most directly, resulting in the expansion of U.S. settlements. Do you see how those first 6 lines are very arguable, very opinionated, and certainly you could argue against that? Katie, take the next part.
The Trans-Continental Railroad was completed in 1869, opened up the West for expansion, contributing mostly to the migration of settlers west. Homestead Act was the biggest government subsidy to promote western migration. The government did not support reservations it had agreed to. Key point, the Western Wilderness was integral to the fulfillment of Manifest Destiny. Dawes Act, biggest government action to remove, assimilate Native Americans.
Should be remove and assimilate, yes. Dawes Act, you got to know. Okay, 3 changes in the American West during the Gilded Age. Take a look at Native Americans. Go, Kemper, please.
Native Americans of the plains hunted, farmed, and traded in traditional ways. Plains peoples relied on the buffalo for a variety of survival needs.
Keep going.
Ranchers and cowhands. Ranchers and cowboys ushered in the era of the long drive and the round tip. Texas longhorn cattle took the place of buffalo as a dominant animal on the Great Plains. Homesteaders. Hundreds of thousands of homesteaders settled on the plains, claiming land grants from the U.S. government. Farmers and the populist movement. New settlement, barbed wire, and bad weather ended the cattle boom. Farmers across the South, Midwest, and West organized to address their common economic problems. Miners. Discoveries of gold and other precious metals led to the growth of mining camps and boom towns in the Rocky Mountains and to the west.
You see how this is all working together? The changes in the frontier. Don't forget the one thing that's up there. What was the great equalizer out on the plains besides barbed wire?
45.
Colt 45, yes. Okay, Katie, narrate.
The Native Americans were caught between the white man and progress. William Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West Show. Buffalo Bill Cody and Sitting Bull. Legendary female Western characters Calamity Jane and Annie Oakley.
Now remember, a lot of this is just fairy tale. This is like Hollywood. This was for performing.
Fall of the Cowboy, Frederick Remington.
Frederick Remington, you might have heard of Remington Firearms. He was a very famous painter out west as well, and he painted many different scenes, as you can see for yourself. By the way, that one on the left, that is a lie. The justification for killing the buffaloes. You couldn't come back home and say, well, we had to kill the buffaloes to control Native Americans because maybe the population in America wouldn't support that. So what they said was, well, we got to kill the buffaloes because the trains can't go out west because of the buffaloes. Anybody buying any of this?
No.
Well, people at the time did. Keep going.
Yellowstone National Park, first national park established in 1872.
There's Old Faithful on the left. Watch out for that geyser.
Yosemite National Park was founded in 1890.
National parks, take a look at it.
They're all out west.
And luckily, a guy named Teddy Roosevelt came along and established most of these.
Except for the one in Maine.
Oh, absolutely. Well, no, he would have supported it, though. Could you imagine if that wasn't actually closed off?
Conservation movement, John Muir with President Theodore Roosevelt.
What's the difference between conservation and preservation? Anybody know? The difference between conservation and preservation.
Preservation is to like save something, right? Conservation is like people can go there and like see it, but like you protect it.
Not necessarily wrong. There's a little more twist to it. Katie.
Isn't preserve to keep something like exactly as it is, and then conserve is just to keep it like there? Yeah, keep it going.
Conservation, you can use it.
Sean's kind of right.
Conservation, you can cut down the trees, you can lumber if you have to. Preservation, you don't touch it. That's where it gets controversial. Do we or do we not conserve a lot of things? I don't know of anything we preserve.
We need to preserve the rainforest. We need to preserve.
And that's not happening, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Sierra Club, they were all about preservation.
Western art, Remington, Bronco Buster, Sadler.
I'll show you a couple of quick pictures.
The Stampede.
Sorry. I love the one on the left that actually shows the realistic part, okay?
Carl Bodmer and George Catlin.
Don't ask me who they are.
Just have to throw them in.
Who's getting defeated?
The natives.
No.
No.
Custer, yes. Once again, John, who's getting defeated?
Custer.
Does anybody remember who defeated him?
Oh, the guy who got killed later. Was it Bigfoot? Or was it?
No.
Was it?
Sitting Bull.
Sitting Bull. Yeah, Sitting Bull destroyed Custer. There's Custer about ready to go down. They call this Custer's last stand. Obviously, a lot of people say that that was completely not the way it all happened.
Probably not.
I think we get the idea. But these are pretty cool, especially if you take a look at the artistry there. Those are actually drawn by Native Americans. This is truly a sad story. Notice that the bodies on the left, some do not have their heads.
Or an arm or a foot.
Horrible. I think we can agree. Custer, just show you a couple of things. I've actually seen that. Actually made a foosball table. Custer versus Sitting Bull. I had to throw that one in. Really is sad though, if you think about it.
Yeah, well, the natives never got treated fairly.
That's what I'm talking about. There you can see Sacagawea on the left, 2000 when the coin came out. West video, we watched that. Okay, that one we did before. Please, somebody answer this for me, please. I'm begging. This is a Jeopardy question. And if you think it'll hit you.
This makes no sense.
Oh, sorry, I meant to freeze the screen. Okay, Congress declared September 6, 2008, Louisa Swain Day because Louisa did this in Wyoming on that date in 1870. In other words, she did this on September 6th, 1870.